Welcome to Module 12, Lesson 2. Our I can statement reads, I can use a visual model and decimal notation to represent fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals in the hundredths. So in the previous lesson, we worked on this to the tenths place. We're going to extend even further to the right in our place value chart. So in the last lesson, we worked on ones and tenths. Now we're going to also be looking at hundredths. All right, number 1. A jar contains 65 hundredths of a liter of fresh squeezed orange juice. Represent the amount of juice on a hundredths model and on a number line. Okay, so I want you to notice the hundredths model here. It looks very similar to our tenths model, but it's broken into 100. So when we're thinking about 65 hundredths, I know that there's 6 columns in that because 65. Okay, so I know that in order to shade this in, I can shade my 60. That's going to be 6 columns of 10. And then I shade 5 more to show 65 hundredths. All right, now we have our number line down at the bottom. These larger tick marks are 10. Right? It's breaking it apart into, just like we did with our tenths model. Right? This would be 1/10, 2/10, and so on. But now we're talking about hundredths. So we want to think about this as 10 hundredths, 20 hundredths. Okay. So we are trying to get to our 60 hundredths. Once we've located our 60 hundredths, then we can find our 65. So 61, 62, 63, 64, 65 hundredths. And so now let's go ahead and take a look at letter A. How would you describe the tick marks on the number line between the tenths? Right, so we have our tenths, right? We found our 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. What do we know about the tick marks between those? Well, there are 10 equal pieces between the tenths. We can say each of these is 1/100th. Right. So we know a hundredth is one of 100 equal sized parts. In a decimal, the first digit to the right of the decimal point is tenths. The second digit to the right is the number of hundredths. So between which tenths did we locate our number on the number line? Well, we had our 60 hundredths, or 6/10. The next one would be 70 hundredths, or 7/10. So between 6 and 7/10. So now we need to think, how many tenths and how many hundredths are represented by 65 hundredths? If I were to draw a line in my hundredths model around the complete columns, each of these columns is also equal to 1/10. So I have 6/10, and then I have my 5 that do not complete a column, my 5/100ths. We have 0 ones, 6/10, 5/100ths. So in order to write 65/100ths, it looks like this in decimal form. Go ahead and pause if you need any more time. All right, on the bottom of your page, it asks you, how do the decimals 0.05 and 0.50 compare? Now, I want you to think about if I were to put these into a place value chart. Okay, ones, tenths, hundredths, ones, tenths, and hundredths. All right, so if we have 0 ones, 0 tenths, and 5/100ths, 0 ones, 5 tenths, 0 hundredths, what's the difference here? Well, this one is a lot smaller, right? If I were to have a hundredths model, I would only be filling in this tiny section of hundredths. However, if I had this, I would be filling in 5/10ths, right? If each of these was a tenth. This would be 5/10ths. So which of these is greater? 50/100ths or 5/10ths, and 0/100ths is greater than 5/100ths. All right, let's take a look at problem 2. Does the hundredths model represent the length in meters of a watermelon vine? How can you use the length of how can you describe the length of the watermelon vine using words? Right, so we have 1, 2, 3 hole filled in. And then we have this tiny little section filled in here. So we have 4. So we have 3 complete hundredths models. And over here we only have 4 hundredths complete. So we can say the vine is 3 and 4/100ths meters long. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and write that as a mixed number. So 3 and 4/100ths. And as a decimal. Okay, I'm going to draw my place value chart to the side. Ones, tenths, hundredths. I know I have 3 ones, and I know I have 4 hundredths. Do I have any tenths in this model? I do not, so I need a 0 in the tenths place. So to write this as a decimal, it would look like 3 and 4/100ths. Now down here it says Max says the vine is 3.4 meters long. Jen says it's 3.04 meters long. Who's correct? Well, let's put maxes into a model, or our place value chart. He says it's 3.4. So what Max is actually saying is it's 3 4/10 meters long. This number is greater than 3 4/100. So Jen is the one who is correct. Right, go ahead and pause and complete the check understanding. Press play when you're ready to check your work. All right, let's go ahead and check your work. You should have filled in 23/100 and shown 23/100 or 2/10 and 3/100. For number 2, I first found 7/10 on my number line. I then knew if I went 3/100 further, I would have 73/100. And here it is in decimal and fraction form.